What's going on, everybody? What's going on? What's going on? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Um, and happy start to the NFL free agency. Because we're going to talk all about it in a minute, but it's really already started, man. The league year does not start officially, does not ring in until Wednesday at 4 p.m. However, we all know that pretty much everything starts on tomorrow, and things have already really started if we're thinking about it. But by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, a lot of these deals are pretty much they're just waiting to be officially sealed. They're already agreed to. So this stuff has already started, but it's really going to get kicked into high gear tomorrow. And so many moves have already been made. Today alone, the Cleveland Browns have extended Myles Garrett after Garrett. There were reports that he wanted out of Cleveland. He ended up staying. He got a record extension of $40 million, which I think we got to tie into in a second. We're talking about what the Falcons might end up doing in free agency and what their approach could be. Other big extensions have happened today, and we're going to talk all about it, man. We're going to talk about it because some of these moves do they obviously affect what the Falcons could be able to do. However, speaking of the Atlanta Falcons and speaking of Terry Fontenot, and these are conversations that we've had and said this is going to be the most important offseason of Terry Fontenot's career. Terry Fontenot is going to have to improve this defense. He's got to come out and improve this defense. And so far, all Terry Fontenot has done was a couple days ago, he gave an extension to Liam McCullough. Now, listen, I got no problem with it. More than deserved. The Falcons have never really had a problem with a long snapper. Long snappers you typically don't see too many problems with. They snap the ball. But Liam McCullough, he's great on the sidelines. He's a hype guy in the bins. I'm glad to see him stay around. But if that's all you've done so far, and let me make something clear. I think something needs to be made clear, and I kind of came to this realization over the past week, that the Falcons were not going to go out like they have the past 2 years and make big-time signings. The Falcons were not going to go make a signing the level of the Kirk Cousins signing. Or they're probably not even going to go make a signing the level of signing Jesse Bates 2 years ago. What the Falcons do in free agency is probably going to be, for the most part, a lot of role players. Is going to be, because we do have to face it. We're not, we don't have the same, cap. We don't have the same what's the word cap privileges. There we go, cap privileges. Let's use that we had the past few years. So things were going to be, it's not as bad as it's been. It's not going to be, and it should not be an off season like 2021 or 2022 where we're having to sign guys off the street, and a guy like Mike Davis is our most notable free agency signing. We did sign CP, so that was a solid signing. But really, outside of the CP signing, we didn't do shit during those two free agencies because we didn't have any money. These past two free agencies, we've been very privileged to have a cap situation that has opened back up, and has given us the ability to go out and sign a guy like Jesse Bates, and gave us the ability to pay Kirk Cousins all the money that we gave and sign a Darnell Mooney and sign some other guys that we really saw. But Cousins and Mooney were the two big moves of free agency for us and arguably in the league. With that being said, we kind of knew it wasn't going to be the same, and especially kind of after how the Kirk Cousins situation worked out, Falcons may take a little bit more of a cautious approach to free agency, and that's one thing because one thing we need to realize: the successful teams are not built through free agency; they are built primarily through the draft. They just use free agency to get that one piece that they couldn't get in the draft, that one piece to complete their team, like the Eagles did with Saquon Barkley. That's really how you go about it. However, free agency, it's still not like it's just totally meaningless, especially for a team in this position, because the Falcons have a ton of holes on the defensive side of the ball. And even though for the most part the offense is set, the Falcons have one free agent in particular that, is, if he hits the open market tomorrow, and all indications look like he is going to hit the open market at noon tomorrow, he is all but for sure gone. Drew Dahlman will get paid upwards of $20 million a year. Now, if the Falcons really wanted to splurge, could they? Yeah, they probably could. And as I said, it's not necessary. The Falcons still have cap flexibility. It's not like it was in 21 and 22, where you're still on the book for Matt Ryan's contract. You still got Julio's contract on the books. You're still paying dead cap for guys like Devontae Freeman. You were still able to operate in a means where you could get some guys. And if you did want to splurge for a signing, you could. You could restructure a contract. Grady Jarrett, I think, is a big one. I would expect we're going to hear some Grady Jarrett news by tomorrow. I would have to anticipate, or at least by Wednesday, but preferably by tomorrow. Now, obviously, with how we've seen Terry Fontenot try to move, we don't know what he's really thinking. But the Falcons are going to have to make some sort of move because as of right now, they are still over the cap by about $5 million. So whether that's releasing David Onyemata, whether that is an extension of Grady Jarrett, whether that is another extension, maybe a extension of a guy like Jesse Bates, or a restructure, maybe Chris Lindstrom, the Falcons are going to have to make some sort of move to at least get cap complacent, let alone to be able to make moves in this free agency. Now, obviously, there's a couple of things that the Falcons are waiting on, and there are a couple of developments that have occurred over the past week that I do want to talk about here tonight. The first one, it's really kind of tough. I'm going to talk about Drew Dahlman first, because I think Drew Dahlman is definitely that one big free agent for Atlanta that, is going to get traction. And if the Falcons do not get something worked out with him, and trust me, you're going to have to pay Drew Dahlman one way or another. Regardless of where the man goes, the man is going to get paid. And I would expect at this point, his value might be at $20 million when you look at where these contracts are going. However, I will say this as I'm reading this, because all sorts of news is really coming through. However, the Falcons have still been silent. And the Falcons, I think, are waiting on a few things. The vibe is what we get before they start making other moves. However, you can't play the waiting game in this league, and I think we should all know that by now. As far as Drew Dahlman goes, honestly, I think there's still time. The Falcons could obviously get something worked out. I will say that first day of free agency, Terry Fontenot wakes up and he just gets to work. He gets to work. He knows what he wants to do. And man, he's right at it. So I will say, I do think I would have to expect we hear something tomorrow of some sorts. Do I think now? Listen, are we going to make a big signing? No. And I'm going to be honest. If the Falcons were to somehow keep Drew Dalman, that would be their big signing. Would be keeping Drew Dalman. Now, I think what the Falcons have to think about, and I think that this is smart, is the Chicago Bears, I am expecting, would offer up to $20 million, maybe even more for Drew Dalman. Drew Dalman could very well end up setting the market for centers. And Drew Dalman might even get money that is outrageous. And some of y'all are going to call me crazy. I could see Drew Dalman getting upwards of $25 million a year. If a team really wants to splurge on the O-line, and I think that is where the Chicago Bears are, with Ben Johnson and the style of football they want to play, I think they would be willing to really splurge on a guy like Drew Dalman. New England is another team. The Las Vegas Raiders, who just traded for Geno Smith. There are several teams out there that San Francisco is a team that are going to be in on Drew Dalman. It's going to be an uphill battle for the Falcons to keep him. And regardless of where he goes, I think Drew Dalman is getting somewhere around the $20 million range at least. That's because that is where the market is going when you look at where everything is going. But some big moves have been made around the league today. Starting with the Myles Garrett extension, a guy that the Falcons were expected to target in free agency, a guy that I think maybe some thought could have been one of their more notable moves if he were to have hit the open market. Linebacker Jamin Sherwood of the Jets ended up re-signing with New York. Obviously had experience with Jeff Ulbrich. The report from Jordan Schultz was Ulbrich really was excited to potentially reunite with him. And obviously it didn't happen. They got him back on a $50 million per year deal for $45 million over 3 years. So that goes to show you teams are making moves, and yet the Falcons are still sitting on their hands with their hands glued to the mattress, sound asleep. Now, let me go ahead and say that I think the Falcons are waiting to see how another thing plays out, and it is obviously the Kirk Cousins fiasco. Now, when we got on here a week ago, we really didn't expect much of any market at all for Kirk Cousins. We thought if the Falcons even got the phone ringing for Kirk Cousins, they would be lucky. A week later, Kirk might have a market. Now, is it going to be a very big market, or how big is that market? Who knows? But listen, the quarterbacks are going to be a very, very big hot topic tomorrow. Obviously, Geno Smith traded to the Raiders. That now a bunch of dominoes are going to start falling. What does Seattle do at quarterback? Many are expecting them to sign Sam Darnold. But then obviously, where does an Aaron Rodgers go? Where does Russell Wilson go? Where does so-and-so go? There is a very big market for quarterbacks. Now, Kirk Cousins, I'm saying, is probably no team's first option. If Seattle cannot land Sam Darnold, maybe they would call Atlanta and say, listen, because Seattle just picked up some picks, say, listen, we'll give you a third or a fourth, because Seattle has just gotten a bunch of picks back. Say, listen, give you this third for Kirk Cousins. I don't think Seattle got rid of Geno Smith not having a plan. And I truly feel like it's either going to be Sam Darnold or Seattle's going to try something else. You're not going from Geno Smith to Kirk Cousins. I think another team that I could see for Kirk Cousins, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just traded for DK Metcalf from Seattle. That could be a team that if they can't, get Russell Wilson back, if there's not interest there, maybe takes a run after Aaron Rodgers. And if they can't pick Aaron Rodgers up, maybe they call for Kirk Cousins. Another team, and this is the team that Kirk has been linked to the most, is the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski was with Kirk in his first few years in Minnesota. The success that they had, I think, is a big part of why Stefanski got that job, and really did kind of take Kirk to that next level as a quarterback. That could be a potential reunion where Kirk tries to get his career for the last few years back on track. And plus, I think the uncertainty with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, regardless, he's out all of this year. They're going to need an answer at quarterback. Does Cleveland decide to take that swing? But at the same time, they just paid Myles Garrett. And the big thing with Kirk is, obviously the cap situation is the contract, and you want to try to get Kirk off the books as much as possible. There were rumors that Kirk could end up going to Vegas before they've traded for Geno Smith. Obviously, those rumors now have ceased to exist. But listen, I think. Well, hold on a minute. Okay, let me. All right, I apologize for that. There were rumors that Kirk could go to Vegas before they ended up trading for Geno Smith. Obviously, that is not happening now. So look, the reality is that the Falcons probably think they hold the cards, but in reality they don't. And in reality, teams are going to make moves before they have to give up anything for Kirk Cousins. So the Falcons have to operate this as if, and look, maybe Terry Fontenot knows something that we don't, just like he did with drafting Michael Penix. Maybe we're crashing out too early at Terry. Maybe he's got a plan. Maybe he's working on something right now to get Kirk Cousins out of here and free up a bunch of cap space. I just don't see that. I don't see where a team is calling for Kirk Cousins right now. The only team I think that could make sense is Cleveland. Even with Cleveland, I think you look at Kirk Cousins is not their first option. Maybe, I think that is most likely, considering the situation. Cleveland holds the second pick in the draft. So unless they don't like Shedeur Sanders, and you've heard of a lot of teams that don't like Shedeur Sanders. They don't like Cam Ward, or they don't think Cam Ward has a chance of falling. And maybe that's where. But does Cleveland realistically, can they make Kirk work? The Falcons may have to take on all of that contract to the point where, you're not. Cleveland isn't paying Kirk anything, but then at that point, could that increase return? Sure, but you also have to think about it. There's a lot of things with this Kirk situation. We've heard that him and Arthur Blank had a meeting on Wednesday night to discuss his future in Atlanta. After, we heard after the season, Kirk was going to take a month off for football. He did that, and then he had the meeting with Arthur Blank. Okay, what do you want to do? Kirk wants to go somewhere where he wants to win. So he doesn't really have a desire to stay in Atlanta, it sounds like. So what I take from that is Kirk obviously wants out. You got to get him out of here. The only thing is now we're hearing the Falcons, they don't want to let go of Kirk for some reason. Now, maybe this is them trying to play hardball, but you can't overplay. And you have to come with reality for a moment. If you can get a fourth rounder for Kirk Cousins, get rid of him. I don't know if the Falcons are trying to recuperate that third. And look, if they're able to get it, props off to Terry. But regardless, this shouldn't be what's holding up your ability to make moves to free up money and try to, re-sign a Drew Dahlman, or freeing up money to at least sign some guys, sign some players. There's been a lot of players that have gotten released recently, especially, when you're talking about the front seven. Harold Landry, who is no longer on the market because he signed with New England, but there are still guys out there. Now, the Myles Garrett extension does change things. I especially think with a couple days ago, there were conversations the Falcons were checking in on Trey Hendrickson. Now, would you have to give up a first round pick for Trey Hendrickson? No, you probably have to give up a second, maybe a third. But a second could still be very, very valuable when you look at the spot the Falcons are in. He is 30 years old, but at the same time, you are still looking at a situation where this is a Falcons team that has not had a pure edge rusher, a guy that you can count on getting to the quarterback, in well over a decade. And so something is gonna have to give. I do want to take a look at the chat here. Before we move on, I see you, Trucker Mike. Terry should have thought about this before giving Kirk $180 million. Well, yeah, it's easy to say that now, but look, we needed a quarterback. We were in a very desperate position, and we gave Kirk that money. That's honestly kind of where the quarterback market is now, but it's definitely a mess. I don't think any of us thought it was going to go this bad. Let's see. Jerry, I see you. Terry doing what Jerry Jones does, nothing. Yeah, exactly. Terry is staying silent right now. Let me make something clear. My issue is not that Terry isn't going to go out and try to make an offer at every big name on the market tomorrow, because I know he's not going to. And I'm fine with that. You don't need the big time players. You get yourself one solid impact free agency signing. And you if you can ideally get yourself a solid impact free agency signing, and then a couple role players who can come in, and if you need them to play on third down, or you need them to play in a certain position, you do it. But you really build the core of your team through the draft. So maybe that's what the Falcons are banking on. And there are still guys like Ruka Roro and guys like Brandon Dorless. Zach Harrison is somebody who the Falcons, I think, are going to bank on to make a jump. The fact that it was expected the Falcons were going to show interest in Jameen Sherwood, which I mean, look, I do think, what was going to be the case considering the Jeff Ulbrich connection. Maybe that shows that the Falcons are going to silently try to make moves. Maybe now the Falcons are going to be able to go to Drew Dahlman and say, hey, you want the $20 million, here's $20 million. The only thing with that, I don't think Drew Dahlman is worth $20 million. Now, where the market is heading, I think guys are definitely getting more than they deserve in some instances where, listen, this is the big thing for free agency. A buttload of these free agency signings we see when the legal tampering period opens is teams with a lot of money signing pretty much above average guys to superstar type contracts. And that's kind of where teams they really don't know where to spend their money wisely. Now, to be fair, when you want to improve your team, you sometimes you got to make the overpay. And the thing with Drew Dahlman is no, he is developed into a really good center, but is he Creed Humphrey? I don't think so. And I think when you look at a Ryan Newsel, a guy that, when you did fill in for Drew Dahlman, when Drew Dahlman was out for a little bit, there really wasn't a large difference. And also Dahlman, or excuse me, Newsel and Michael Penix, that was the center he worked with. So listen, if the Falcons don't keep Drew Dahlman tomorrow, and honestly, I don't expect them to, it's not really something I'm going to be too upset over, because as I've said, you need to improve the defensive side of the football also. Let's see, Shiesty, I see you. Jerry, what's going on? Trucker Mike, teams making moves to compete and win, and we just doing nothing to get by. I'm tired of us not being serious. Yeah, and look, I'm going to continue to say it. The thing is, if we were hitting, if Terry Fontenot showed that he was a really good drafter, I think we're relaxing more. I think we're going a little bit of more, okay, we can, listen, Terry's got us covered. Terry's going to, have all the, chips in the right order on draft night. And look, we are hearing that the Falcons are tightening down on the draft this year. They're going to zero in on defense. Finally, maybe they feel really confident in their draft process this year. But how many times have they probably felt confident in their draft process in the past and it not work out? And outside of the first round, this guy has gotten so far throughout 4 drafts. You could probably look at it and say maybe three solid impact players so far that have truly been able to make an impact consistently with this team. Maybe 4, and one of those guys is getting ready to leave. One of those guys is probably getting ready to leave tomorrow, and Drew Dahlman. Which for that to be part of his first draft class, and obviously it's Dahlman worked himself into a big contract, but the fact he couldn't get that locked up is still gonna sting, but it's not the biggest thing to trip on, but it's still kind of, because you knew what the situation was a year ago. He knew what the situation was going to be a year ago, but at the same time, I will say that I do believe if Ryan Newsel is the center in the fall, I from what I saw, I don't think it's going to be all that bad, because we have a very solid offensive line coach. One thing Arthur Smith did good was he left a solid blueprint for the O-line. However, you still you have to retain your players, man. You do. Let's see. Already big moves in the NFL. Garrett stays in Cleveland. Devontae Adams to Las Vegas, and just Metcalf to Pittsburgh. Crazy free agency hasn't started. Yeah, exactly. Well, it really already kind of has started, but it officially hasn't started yet. Yeah, no, I hear you. Back themselves into a corner. By the time we do something, all the good available players will be gone, and we'll have to settle for the draft and take second or third tier veterans. Hold on, Shiesty, is this true? All right. Looks like Terry's finally made a move. Shout out to you, Shiesty. Jake Matthews, 2 years, $45 million extension. Man, I tell you, Jake Matthews is gonna play forever, man. But let's see. Is this the last move the Falcons are gonna make for the O-line? or are they trying to? I mean, I don't know how much money this frees up. Um, I'm sure this definitely gives us more flexibility. So shout out to you for telling me that. Shicey, I was getting all carried away and stuff. I was just about to you know uh, start lighting Terry up, and he saved himself at the last moment. So let's pull this up here. It's on the Falcons website yet. I know it's on Twitter. This is per rap sheet. See, the Falcons officially have a release on their website yet about this. If they do, we'll pull it up. Um, and God, I want to say this is Jake's fourth contract he's gotten. And typically, most players don't get more than three. So, man, Jake's been playing a long ass time, but that's how his daddy was. His daddy played for a long ass time. I think someone needs to, let's see. No, I don't think the news has been broken yet. But yeah, man, no, this is. Yeah, no, I guess Terry is up. He heard us. He heard us fucking yelling and shit. He's like, God damn, okay, I'll give y'all something. Terry saw me go live. He's like, oh shit, but better make a fucking move. Let's see what we got here. Let's see what what we what we're gonna be dealing with here. Okay, let's see. Here we go. So here's the official report. 22 million a year, and the thing with Jake is, he's still a solid player. I think one of the things that springs up now is if we're keeping Jake, do they potentially swap him and McGarry? Do they have Jake protect Penix's blind side? I think is a conversation maybe where we have a little bit later in the offseason. So I think that's something we got to talk about now with this extension that happened. Um, so yeah, 2 years, 45 million, 38. So a lot of that is fully guaranteed. Years 12 and 13 as for protecting the blind side. Taking a look at some comments here. All right, so we are listening. Terry's officially he's making those moves. He's getting active. And now I think that the big thing is now that we know they're focused on the O line, and this for sure I know is going to free up some money. Now we see what they do with Drew Dahlman, and if they are able to keep Dahlman, then as I say, that's probably the big move in free agency. But I do want to bring up, and I think this is important with the surplus in solid edge rushers that have been put on the open market. And obviously Harold Landry's not, but there's still a lot of them on the market. The Falcons have to get one of them. And I think that is clear and obvious. The Falcons must get one of these guys in order to make a statement. So it's pretty obvious that the first domino falling now with the Jake Matthews signing takes a step towards probably freeing up a little bit of cap space. And one thing we know is that, when one move, comes in, a bunch of other moves are bound to come in. So we're going to stay on for a little bit and, see what happens. Do I think we're going to get anything major? I guess we'll see. But yeah, this is the sort of free agency, but it's clear and obvious that the primary focus still needs to be on the defensive side of the ball. And we need to be able to actually make that effort towards improving the defense. And I think how we approach free agency is going to affect the draft strategy. Now, I'm obviously not really going too deep into the draft tonight, but I will say after Jameen Sherwood signing back with the Jets, I think the chances of the Falcons taking Jihad Campbell at 15, they massively go up. When you're looking at what the Falcons were wanting in someone that can play in space. And, the thing was, I was thinking, if, the Falcons signed Jameen Sherwood, would they really need for Jihad Campbell? Because they're really two of the similar type of linebacker. Now, when we look at it and we really see the situation for what it is, I think the Falcons are, that could definitely be a position that they go. However, the number one priority must be the pass rush. And it's obviously been what has haunted this organization for years, really since John Abraham left. And the Falcons have to fix it, whether it is in free agency or the draft or both. Now, I will say the ideal situation would, I think, be for the Falcons to take either Jihad Campbell or Mike Green. Now, considering Mike Green's legal issues, I fear that could be a turnoff for Atlanta. One thing that I do think has been brought up recently is Matthew Judon and the possibility of the Falcons bringing him back. Now, based on what we saw from Judon last year, he had 5.5 sacks. He really, he kind of came in out of shape. He had an okay start to the year, but really after those first few games, he disappeared for much of the season. So I think the question is what the Falcons bring him back. I think if the Falcons bring him back, they got to bring him back at a reasonable price, considering his production and his age. Taking a look at some of these names that have become available. Do I think that the Falcons are going to be able to pull off a Trey Hendrickson trade? I wouldn't count on it, because I truly think that that's just one of those situations the Falcons might be priced out of. But the Falcons, some names that could, you see potentially pop up. One name is Zadarius Smith, who has, he's been pretty solid throughout his career. He had 9 sacks last year, but the thing is, when I'm looking at this list, there's a lot of guys here, and the Falcons should definitely pick up one of these guys. However, what we have to keep in mind is that a lot of these guys are either old or you kind of look at it and you say, are you really what you are, or was it the team around you? But that's the thing, is you very rarely see a bona fide guy hit the market. Now, I think the Falcons, should definitely look in on a Trey Hendrickson trade. Um, you know, but the thing is, even with him, he's 30 years old. If he was a year or two younger, I would be all in on him. Now, I still think he could get some solid years out of him. I will say that. But, you know, it's just I don't think, I think some would say that we could do it, and we definitely could. And I wouldn't be mad if we did, but I just don't know if it's one of those things you can expect. However, if the Falcons are going to be aggressive, this has to be one of those spots where you prove you're aggressive. But some names that are available, Zadarius Smith, and that could be an interesting one. But some of these guys, I'll look at it. Joey Bosa is a guy that has popped up. Now, listen, Joey Bosa cannot stay healthy and is way too damn old and is going to command a lot of money. No to Joey Bosa. I would rather bring back Matthew Judon in that case. Now, a guy that kind of is interesting to me in a sense is Hassan Reddick. Now, hear me out with Hassan Reddick. I think I talked about him a week ago. How he played that contract situation was awful, and he's not going to get paid anywhere near that now. He's a little bit younger, I believe, than Judon. Let me verify that. Yeah, so he'll be turning 31 during the season. When you look at it, he could still have he could still have 1 or 2 solid years left in him. And you're looking at a guy who has been a solid, 10 plus sack guy, in his career. And if you get him on a deal, that's the thing. You some of these guys you got to get in for a full off season. So I look at that and I say that could be interesting, but at the same time, I would maybe expect him and Judon are garnering about the same. Another guy who popped up on the list was Azeez Ojulari. Now he is a guy who is pretty young. He was a guy I actually talked about maybe the Falcons potentially trade for last year, but the thing with Azeez Ojulari, and now I will say, I do think that is a move that could happen. He had about, now he was on track to have a pretty solid year until he got hurt. He's a guy that you honestly look at and you kind of say, for the most part, he's kind of have a career similar to Arnold Ebiketie. And, I don't know if, I truly think, if you want to talk about, finally being able to unlock, some of those guys, you do have to get that more solid guy that you can count on. That's why I talk about. Yes, Trey Hendrickson costs a lot, but if you really are going to be aggressive, that needs to be something that you really need to think about. However, it's just one of those spots where, regardless, you have to address this pass rush this offseason. That has to be the number one priority. Now, Something that could happen, and maybe now, because I'm going to be honest, I don't know how much the Falcons address linebacker through free agency now. I think if the Falcons do make any type of, impact signing, saying Drew Dalman leaves, it's either going to be a corner or it could be one of those pass rushers. Now, Mike Hughes is a guy that was not awful last year, but I do think you could upgrade at. It feels like Mike Hughes is a role player, but it truly feels like you need to get that corner to opposite of AJ. And whether you decide to go and get that in the draft or you get that in free agency, I think we're gonna, have to wait and see. However, the vibe I would take at this point is, I think if you're gonna make any signing, and another guy I failed to mention was Milton Williams. Now, Milton Williams obviously had a big showing in the Super Bowl. I think is somebody that could potentially fit into this defense. When I look at Milton Williams, I get the feeling that he could fit into this defense. Taking a look at it, he had 5 sacks this year, but obviously he had a big impact in the Super Bowl. But the thing is is he really emerging? He could be one of those emerging stars that maybe you get for the cheap. Um, you know, and he's also an interior defensive lineman, so he's one of those big boys. And we do know that, with that interior D line, the Falcons are definitely going to be banking, I think, on Rukaroro. But if you cut David Onyemata, then at that point, you are going to need another running mate for him. And you could definitely see that, maybe with a Milton Williams. And that's another thing. We need some big boys up front, especially if we're only going to be rushing four. You're gonna need to find those rushers, and you're also gonna need some big guys. That's what I'm gonna continue to say. You're gonna need to find some of those big boys that can operate up front. Um, let's see. Just taking a look around. Obviously, the eve of free agency. I do plan on coming live tomorrow. I do plan on coming live tomorrow, and talking about, probably about like at 5 or something, and talking about everything that has go down, and hopefully we have some stuff to talk about with the Falcons. Um so yeah, definitely gonna be looking forward to that. Um, you know, but I will say it's, I think Terry's got to do more than just this extension. He's got to do more than just this extension. He's maybe, I mean, you extended Jake. Do you extend Grady next? I think that's the big thing that we look at. You know, stay on a few more minutes. The link should be pinned at the top. If not, it is here in case anyone, free to join in, give your opinion on free agency. But as I say, I think, and a Milton Williams could make sense, because I think Milton Williams could be a role player. I do. That could be one of your role players. Ojolari could be a role player. So realistically, as I say, if the Falcons are going to be aggressive, I think you got to get a Trey Hendrickson. But if, I think the more realistic expectation is you're going to go get some role players, and you're going to draft heavy on defense. I think that could be the plan for this offseason. But as I say, the issue is not, going out and signing every star or not. It's making moves. I'm, glad to see at least Terry made that move. It's not the only move he needs to make. Now I will say one more thing before I get ready to get out of here concerning the Trey Hendrickson. That Gary getting 40 million completely resets the market. I think Michael Parsons, that now puts Dallas in a dilemma. And, I think that, listen, I don't expect the Falcons to trade for Michael Parsons. I don't. But, regardless, Parsons is going to get paid. I think Trey Hendrickson, though, would be a more realistic option for this team. Um, and kind of looking at it, I don't think Hendrickson is worth 40, but he would definitely get paid at least 25. 25, probably somewhere around 30 I could see. Now, could the Falcons afford that? And that they could probably make it work, but as we talk about, it's you know how safe is this team going to play it? Now, I don't know if Terry Fontenot is in a position to play it safe because, as I talk about, he's got to make something happen or he's going to be out of a job if we miss the playoffs again. So something's going to have to end up giving. Um, yeah, man, it's it is starting to heat up. I'll give you that. It is starting to heat up, and by this time tomorrow, it's going to be completely on fire. So yeah. Um. Anyways, I don't think I'm gonna stay on here too much longer. I'm ready to go to bed. Maybe get a little bit of sleep. Because man, tomorrow is going to be quite a day. Obviously got some stuff to do throughout the day, but I listen. I'll be keeping my phone close to me throughout the day and seeing what happens. And I'll plan to go live about maybe 5 tomorrow. Yeah, and talk about everything. But anyways, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all tomorrow.